Ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the screens.
We're in a crisis state, let's face it. The epidemics of drug addiction and broken families and homelessness is real.
So you have what you have now, a wholesale poverty industry that does not change the bottom line, the people that they serve. Human life makes us have to constantly come back from things. But this movement is about coming back from the places where most folk have been left to die.
But what we have today is a need for a shift in our approaches to poverty, but the shift will never happen until the larger community sees what works and what doesn't. It's not about building stars or celebrities, but it is about telling the story.
You have so many people who realize that God is not finished, that they are not finished, that life is still achievable even through some of the hardest circumstances ever.
I lived a hard life in Chicago.
I've had more guns in my face than I care to remember.
I was there. I was hardcore there.
Either keep using or die, and I would have rather died than keep using.
So many times the experts are seen as the people with the degrees, when the experts are really the people that have come back.
You guys got me amped up.
We all amped up. And the only way we're going to take back our community is get those same type of people that help break the community.
I'm holding his hand saying, we're going to come out of this together.
There's nothing more powerful than a witness. We got so many witnesses here.
This is real. This is so authentic.
When you give a microphone to Jubal and Omar, they will talk about solutions.
When you do it, give it your all. If you don't give it your all, you don't know how far you're going to go. Today, I still give it my all. I want to see how far I can go.
Quitting's not an option. We can't quit. We have to do this.
Please welcome back to the stage, Jimmy Kemp.
We can't quit, and we now have somebody who hasn't quit and won't quit like the others who have been up on this stage. But I hear, and I believe it to be true, that it's a good day in South Carolina. It's a good day in South Carolina because y'all have a governor who, when situations hit, she knows how to lead. When the Emmanuel Church happened, she knew what to say, she proved that she cared, and she's led in that way. And it's an honor for us at the Kemp Foundation to be able to welcome to the stage your governor, Nikki Haley. Thank you.
So much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It is a great day in South Carolina. We are so excited to have, first of all, to have Jimmy here, to have the Kemp Foundation, and everything that his dad did to continue on. I mean, this is such an important thing. When you talk about poverty, you have to talk about solutions. And what I've always said is Republicans have always thought about it, but they haven't always said it. And that's what we want to do, is we want to talk about these things. And so I wanted to come out, first of all, just to welcome you and thank you for being here, to thank the Kemp Foundation for doing this in South Carolina, because we think that it's so incredibly important. I want to give a couple of shout outs because I think it's so important in terms of Speaker Ryan said that when he took his leadership role that things were going to change. How about the fact that they repealed Obamacare? Was that not fantastic? And then you've got Senator Scott, who has been a fighter in everything we're doing. But the one thing he's partnered with me, and the one thing I'm so glad he's doing, is he's continuing to fight about Guantanamo Bay. Give it up for Tim Scott, because we need him to keep fighting for us on that front. So now let me talk to you a little bit about what we've done in South Carolina. When you talk about issues of poverty, you're talking about people you don't always see. You're talking about people you don't always hear. And what we saw in South Carolina was the situation with education. And what we know is If you improve education, you lift up all things. And so we had this situation in education that we just never seemed to get past where we needed to go. And so we took a year out and we studied it. And what started it was, you knew I grew up in Bamberg, small town. We didn't know what we didn't have. Now my daughter goes to the big River Bluff High School in Lexington, where every classroom has a smart board, a flat screen TV, every child has a tablet. Yet when I went back to my hometown in Bamberg, they didn't even have the equipment to play a video on. That's immoral. It's wrong. And we said in South Carolina we weren't going to let that happen anymore. So we got together with our General Assembly, Republicans and Democrats. We said we were going to make a change. And we acknowledged the fact for the first time that it just costs more to educate a child in poverty. So we changed the funding formula. We put reading coaches in every elementary school. We put technology in every school and said we are no longer going to educate children based on where they're born and raised. We're going to educate every child because they deserve a good education, and that's our future workforce. We've doubled down on reading coaches. We've continued with technology, internet to the schools, internet inside the schools, making sure those kids have tablets. And now we're taking it a step forward to where we're saying in rural, poverty-stricken areas, we need to have good teachers, and we need those teachers to stay. So you will see this year we start funding a program where anyone that gets a teaching degree, if you promise to teach in a rural area for 8 years, we will pay for your education. We are now going to do that. And the beautiful part of all of this, we're doing it without raising taxes. All we did was say we have to make education a priority in South Carolina. We have to show that we care about these kids. And it's not what you say, it's what you do. And so in South Carolina, we're doing that on education. But then we had another opportunity. We saw an opportunity that when people lose their job, when they go and ask for unemployment, when they go and sign up for welfare, we were missing an opportunity. Now in South Carolina, when we have somebody come for a job, they don't sit down and just fill out paperwork to get welfare. They sit down and they're in an interview. We ask them, what are you good at? What's your skill set? And we have matched them up with businesses. And to date, we have taken over 25,000 people off of welfare and put them to work. What this comes down to is opportunities. There is not one parent, rich or poor, that doesn't want their child to have a good education. There is not one person, rich or poor, that doesn't want to be a contributing member to society. Everybody wants to be and have a better life. Everybody wants a better life for their children. What we have to do is come up with the opportunities, because when you have the opportunities, you have solutions. And when you have solutions, that's when you lift people up. And that's what I'm so thrilled that the Kemp Foundation is doing, is this is all about talking about opportunities and solutions. And if we continue to talk about them, and then we follow up by acting on them, we will actually make every day a better day in South Carolina than the day before it. And we can do that across this country. So thank you for taking the time to be here. Thank you to all the presidential candidates who are having to be in a lot of states at the same time. Thank you for them and them taking it to be a strong stance to be looking at poverty. But now I want to talk to you about one that's no longer a presidential candidate, but is a dear friend. And I will tell you, Senator Lindsey Graham made us all proud in South Carolina in the way that he talked about foreign policy. I have watched Senator Graham every time I've needed him, whether it was fighting the unions with the NLRB, whether it was Obamacare, whether it's dealing with Guantanamo Bay, in any situation, whether it was dealing with the flood. All I had to do was pick up the phone, and Senator Graham was always there. But his brightest moment was the fight he did on foreign policy as a candidate for president. That is a conversation that, while he's not in the running, that is a conversation that will go on because of Lindsey Graham, because he brought up conversations that we hadn't talked about. So help me give a very warm thank you to our senior senator, Senator Lindsey Graham.
Thanks, Governor. Thank you very much. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, thank you. I finally made it on the big stage. The bad news for you is I got 4 hours of unused time. But we can do this. Number one, to our governor, she is going to give the Republican response to President Obama. From a South Carolina point of view, we're very proud of our governor. She's earned that right. How many of you are from out of state? You want to help poverty? Spend money while you're here. 7% sales tax. So very quickly, thank you for coming to Columbia. To all the people who sponsored this, thank you very much. To the people who believe in early childhood education, count me down. I want to do a lot of things in terms of helping people improve their life. But if we don't get out of debt, you can do none of those things, right? Right. How do you get out of debt? Well, why did the guy rob the bank? Because that's where the money is. So what I want this group to do is not only focus on how to increase the ability of average Americans to get out of poverty, but to make sure we don't become Greece. So I'm asking you to put one thing on your portfolio you don't have today. Urge the Congress to do something like Simpson Bowles. I know Jack Kemp, if he was around, he would do that. So if we don't get our fiscal house in order, we can't do all the good things that you want to do. So the baby boomer generation, of which I am one, anybody born from 46 to 64? Anybody born after 64? Good luck. So I would like to see, if not this year, soon, a coming together of the Republican and Democratic Party to find a way to save Medicare and Social Security from bankruptcy, to flatten out the tax code, and put some money on debt. Younger people, you're going to have to work a little bit longer. Sorry about that. To people in my income level, you may have to take a little less and pay a little more in. Sorry about that. But you got to do what you got to do. And if I'm going to ask a young man or woman to go overseas to fight radical Islam, I will ask people here to sacrifice too. And the good news is the type sacrifices I'm talking about are pretty small. The sooner we do it, the smaller they'll be, and the quicker we can get on with saving our country. As to poverty, the cure to poverty is a job. How do you get out of poverty? Get a job. Get a job that pays more than the poverty rate. How do you create a job? You have to have somebody go create one. Most people have to borrow money to create a job. Not everybody. But all I want to tell you is that the Republican and Democratic Party have failed in this regard. We're not where we need to be. The war on poverty declared by Lyndon Johnson is still going on. Do you think we're winning or losing? Do you think we can do better? Don't you think the Republican Party can up our game? Don't you think we can spend some money to invest in education that may not be traditional Republican or orthodoxy, but we should? Do you think Democrats can maybe help create jobs better than they're doing? So the bottom line is, I would like my party to be more like Jack Kemp. To the extent that I can as a senator in 2017. No matter who wins the White House, and I hope it's a Republican, we'll have a chance to start over and maybe focus on this issue in a way we've never done before. Ms. Kemp, are you here? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to you and your family. Where did the party of Jack Kemp go? Is it still out there? I think so. I hope and pray that the party of Jack Kemp will come back with a vengeance, because he got it. A party is not worth its salt if it can't help people. And I do believe that the only way you're going to get out of debt and the only way you're really going to end the war on poverty is for both parties to work together. I don't know how to do either without some bipartisanship. And Tim Scott is the new Jack Kemp for the Republican Party, I hope. I want to thank him for taking a leadership role. He played football too. As you can tell, I did not. Paul Ryan gets it. He's a disciple of Jack Kemp. So we've got a moment here as Republicans to build on what Tim and Paul are trying to do for our party, and everybody wanting to be president for the most part are here today. That tells you the power of the Kemp name and the power of the idea of trying to solve a problem. We as Republicans have a problem demographically. We do not do well with lower income Americans because they think that the Republican Party doesn't have their interest at heart. Our Democratic friends do very well electorally, but the bottom line is both parties are failing. So what I would like to do as a Republican is to convince every American that cares about poverty that we also care. But it's not enough to care. You have to actually do something. And here's what I want to leave you with. If it takes me working with a Democrat to get us out of debt, I will do my part. If it takes me working with a Democrat to create an agenda that will create jobs that don't exist today and provide education that's lacking, I will do my part. We're about to have an election, as you can tell. I hope every candidate wanting to be president of the United States will be challenged by you to see if they'll do their part. It will be impossible to solve these big problems without presidential leadership. Choose wisely. Welcome to South Carolina.
Everybody. Whew. This has been a fantastic conversation, has it not? Absolutely.
It's been a great audience, too.
It has been a great audience.
Very good
and they're
audience.
all Green Bay Packer fans, I can assure you.
Oh, time out. Well, all the people who know where the Green Bay Packers play football, please raise your hand.
Yeah, see,
all right.
Didn't I say they're all Green Bay Packers?
How many Carolina Panthers in the house? I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. How many Cowboys in the house? Back to you, Paul.
Cowboys.
Anyway, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you going to get reelected in South Carolina being a Cowboys fan?
You know, I'm becoming a Carolina Panthers fan.
Yeah, that's right. All right, there you go. Hey, we're going to keep this conversation going. We have two dynamic leaders. We have Governor of Ohio, John Kasich, and Senator from Florida, Marco Rubio. Please join us in welcoming these guys.
Woo. Thank you very much.
Hey. Okay. Thanks. Fun to have a seat.
That's fun.
So we've been having this conversation, and what I think people ought to get out of this is conservatives are bringing their A game, to fighting poverty, to restoring opportunity. We're trying to show how if you apply the principles that we know, that we believe, that created this country, to this seemingly intractable problem, to this inflexible mantra of a status quo and the war on poverty, and you apply our principles, we can make breakthroughs. And that's what's exciting about this, is because now you've got two parties in this game competing for ideas on how to fix this thing. This thing being, how do we restore the American idea that everybody in this country can make it? And how do we treat these problems at the root causes so we can break the cycle of poverty? And the two of you have taken a lot of leadership role in this. Marco, you've been working on this in the Senate. John, you've been not just talking the talk, you've been walking the walk. So, John, let's just start this off. I know this is something you care deeply about. I used to serve on the budget committee with John Kasich when he was chairman, which means I used to work for John Kasich.
Oh.
And we go back a long ways. I know this has been deep in your heart for a long time. What have you done in Ohio that has made a difference? And how do we translate that?
Well, the list is long, Paul. I mean, first of all, we're up 385,000 jobs, and that helps. But I think the other message is it's what Jack always talked about. I used to serve with Jack and had a great time with him, is that you have to have an attitude that everybody should have an opportunity to rise. So, let's just take a couple issues. Criminal justice reform, which we've enacted. We give judges more discretion now based on what a person did. Let's talk about banning the box. So you were a felon when
Explain the box. Yeah.
You were a nonviolent felon. You go in to apply for a job in the state, and there's a box here that says, check if you were a felon. You check it. We say, oh, thanks for coming in. We take your application, and we throw it in the trash. Well, now, we'll find out that you were a felon, but it would be the second or third interview when you could explain exactly where you were. And then collateral sanctions, where if you had in fact committed a crime, but you've been rehabilitated, we give you a way back so you can get a job in a lot of these professions where you're currently not permitted to get one. We've also enforced the laws in Ohio on set-asides, because we want minorities to go to develop entrepreneurship so they can rise. So, and give you a good example, in Cleveland, we're building a road from the downtown Cleveland to the Cleveland Clinic. And we've invited the minority community to participate in the building of that road. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure they have a piece of that action and that they have a say in where that road goes so they don't get blocked off. And they're just thrilled about that. We've reformed the public schools in Cleveland with an African-American Democrat mayor and the whole community, and now the schools are working better. And that was a big, big lift. So all these things, and there's many, many more, the programs we're doing to rehab people on drugs. We have a program in our prisons now where we have moved our addiction services into the prisons and then released those folks into the community where they're supervised, and the recidivism rate is less than 20%. That's a miracle. And then at the same time, our recidivism rate in the prisons is about half the national average, because we give people an opportunity to work their way out. But Tim, if they're a gangbanger, and they create violence in the prison, we're going to throw away the key. But everybody deserves a chance. Everybody deserves an opportunity. With people who are in their 50s who lose their job, they live in the shadows too. We have adult education. We have new programs in the schools now where if you are likely to be a dropout, we're going to carve out an individual education path for you where you will not drop out and you will get a high school diploma. I mean, we now in the schools, we try to educate people for jobs that exist, not educate them in a vacuum. I mean, this and many, many more things. And the developmentally disabled, we're now integrating them into the workforce. We can get them out of a sheltered workshop. We can get them in a hospital setting, a grocery, a Walmart, or whatever, where they can perform, where they can feel that their life has meaning, and their parents love this. I mean, the list goes on, but it is an attitude of economic growth, and then when you're growing, everybody has to feel as though they have a chance to rise. And a rising tide does lift all boats. Welfare reform, you go into a welfare office, you got more caseworkers than you have if you're in a hospital. And what we've done is we've narrowed the caseworker to one. We've invited businesses into the welfare office so that when you're getting your aid, we're also going to train you for jobs that exist, because the guy that has, or the woman that has the job is sitting next to you. Mm-hmm. So it's all an opportunity to help people to go, and we follow the motto of my mother's. It's a sin not to help people who need help, but it's equally a sin to continue to help people who need to learn how to help themselves. And that's the motto we kind of follow, and it's working.
Marco, you have a tremendous life story and certainly have great respect for your parents and what they overcame. Sometimes people believe that we as Republicans don't know any poor people. And unfortunately, every time I go home, see my family, I walk into a neighborhood that is still mired in poverty. And what I hear in the neighborhoods when I go see my grandfather every week is not requests for more government assistance. It's a leg up. It's more training, more education. Yeah. Empowering the individual seems to be the solution. What's been your experience?
And first of all, I think that's why it's important, and it's so good that the Republican Party has candidates running for president like John Kasich, whose father was a mailman, and my father, who was a bartender, and others who worked for a living and struggled to provide for their families running for president. Because one thing is to read about these things, another is to live them, as John has, as I have, as you have, as Paul has as well in their lives. This is important. And let me just back up and say, John Casey just described the things they're doing in the state. One of the things I hope we do at the federal government is find more ways to take all the money we spend on anti-poverty and turn them over to John Kasich and governors like that at the state level so that they can make a difference. Yeah, I think they probably support block granting. It sounds like something like that.
So, Marco, you have you did this Flex Fund program, and so you've taken this issue on quite a bit, and one of the things that you did was to propose taking the strings at the federal level off and getting them back to the states so that we can have what you call flex funds. That's similar to the opportunity grant that we've made proposals for.
Because you saw the innovation.
Tell us how the flex fund works. Tell us how that
what it would do is it would
works.
take federal anti-poverty money and turn it over to states and local communities. The innovation's never going to come from the federal government. John, you've been involved at the state and the federal level. You know that only at the state level are you going to get, at the state and local level, are you get the kind of innovations that we see described here today in Ohio and in other states across the country.
By the way, Marco, when you went to college in the 70s, it's always good for a nice protest every once in a while.
I thought about handling them the way another candidate does, but I thought it would be, it's not my event. So,
And you know what? I don't want to take over here, but let me just tell you.
You're trying to.
I was on television this morning.
We have 41 minutes.
I saw a crowd booing this woman who was being escorted. That's not the spirit of Jack Kemp. I mean, we are people that can tolerate differences and respect people, and this was just nonsense. And that is not the Republican Party. I'm sorry, Marco.
No, thank you. And
back to Marco.
Marco said, Don, take your time. Take your time.
Good job. If I could take a step back for a moment and say that the reason why I love free enterprise is because it's the only economic model in the history of the world where you can make poor people richer without making rich people poorer. In essence, it allows everyone to move ahead.
Yeah,
okay?
I like that.
Good. So in a free enterprise economy, if there is poverty, it is because there has been an impediment to allowing free enterprise to work in people's lives. And we face a lot of those impediments in the 21st century, and that's what the block granting or the Opportunity Fund that you talked about, the Flex Fund that I've talked about, is designed to eliminate. For example, if you are a child born into a broken family, in an unstable home, in a dangerous neighborhood, in substandard housing, in a school that's failing in your community, where the people on the street corners are drug dealers or not good role models, you've got 6 strikes against you. Unless something dramatic happens to shake up that dynamic, statistics say you are going to struggle to get ahead. And so we need to be focusing our assistance on breaking that model.
Right.
And again, I don't think you're ever going to get that from the federal government. There is no way the federal government can design innovative and creative programs in a one-size-fits-all approach that fits the entire country. So I think it behooves us to say we care about poverty, and we care so much that we are going to make the funds available to those out there who know how to make a difference at the state and local level. And I got to tell you, the difference depends on where you are in life. We have in this country the problem I just described. We have non-traditional students. And you also talked about job training. This is an important part of it. People in their 20s and 30s. Take the example of a single mother who makes $10 an hour as a receptionist, and she's raising 2 kids on her own. The only way she's ever going to get a raise... the only way she's ever going to get... I'm going to keep talking through this stuff.
Go for it.
The only way she's ever going to get a raise is if she goes back to school and acquires a degree that pays more than what she's able to do now.
Right.
What's the impediment to being able to do that now? The impediment is that school's too expensive, or school's during the day while she has to work. And so...
so the question is, those of us who've done this are kind of used to this sort of thing. I know it's maybe jarring for the audience, but the question is then, what is the proper role of the federal government? Is the role of the federal government to respect individuals, respect communities, civil society, state, local government, and then just provide resources? That's what when we talk with governors about block grants, when we talk with senators about getting resources back in the communities, but loosening the strings, that doesn't mean we care less. That doesn't mean we don't have ideas. That means what we're trying to do is liberate people who are there fighting poverty eye to eye, soul to soul, person to person, with the power to do it, to actually change and affect. And yes, there are resources. So is that basically what you're suggesting with your flexible grant?
Right.
Which is resources, yes, but command and control, no?
Well, there are two things we need to do. One is we need to ensure we have economic policies that allow the American economy to be the most competitive in the world. So those better paying jobs are created here instead of somewhere else. And the other is we are going to focus on eradicating poverty, curing it. We don't cure poverty. We treat the symptoms of poverty. We treat the pain of poverty, but we do not cure poverty in America today with these federal programs. So the goal is to ensure that those funds are being given to those entities at the state and local level that will cure poverty by empowering people to turn their lives around, acquire the skills they need for those better paying jobs that hopefully a dynamic American economy is creating for them.
You know, Paul, let me give you a perfect example. We are involved, I was involved in writing the first welfare reform bill back in Congress, and now I'm on welfare reform 2. First of all, do you realize that there are people who are on government assistance that can't take a pay raise because they will lose more than what they gain? So you take a woman who is offered a pay raise, and that's why we're raising our threshold to 300% of poverty, so that when a woman makes more money, she doesn't lose her child care. So we need to have a system that encourages people to work their way off. Let me give you another one. We're now saying that under the work requirement, because most people don't know, if you're on general relief, you have to work 30 hours a week if you're able-bodied. Most people don't know that. But we want to put an education opportunity in there. If you can be trained, it ought to work towards your work requirement. But we have to ask Washington to give us permission to do that. To me, that's absurd. That's why I would ship the whole welfare programs back to the states with guardrails, though. Like, I'd like to ship Medicaid back to the states with guardrails. I mean, you can't take Medicaid money for the poor and spend it on highways. But by giving you the flexibility and fewer rules, you can take it a very long way. And I got to tell you, Marco, in the old days when we were balancing budgets, we have another program in the federal government that I think works. It has fraud in it, but we have to clear that out, and we've now put it into Ohio, and that's called the Earned Income Tax Credit, so that people at the bottom can make more money and have an incentive to earn more, because they have a higher marginal rate than people who are at the top, Paul, as you know. So we got to make sure that we have the incentives for people to rise and not put them in a position of where they go to work and they lose more than what they gain, and they're like, this system is terrible. So giving the states more flexibility and having a leader, whoever that leader is, to share with people around the country those efforts that are really working to get people an opportunity and to begin to lift them out of poverty.
We mentioned it in the earlier panel. The highest marginal tax rate, when you look at the poverty trap today, isn't Warren Buffett, isn't Aaron Rodgers. It's the single mom with 2 kids making something like $28,000, losing 80 cents on the dollar if she takes a step forward. That's an 80% marginal tax rate effectively, which is a huge disincentive to work. Why would you make the risk if you're losing so much in doing it?
Well, that's why Washington shouldn't write the rules, and we should ask permission. I mean, you can't even if you call the welfare department, Health and Human Services in Washington, you'll get voicemail. I mean, those people have no clue. I'm the governor of Ohio. They don't even know what time zone I live in. So just give me my program and let me run it and hold me accountable for not spending the money on something that it wasn't designed to do. This is pretty simple. And I think we're all for it, right, Marco? All of us are for it.
Marco, one of the major impediments to seeing the eradication of poverty has to do with our tax code. It is complicated, it is challenging, and it is very difficult to create businesses today in America.
Right.
I'm a big believer that you have to have more entrepreneurs in communities if you want to truly have an impact on poverty. How do we get there under your proposal?
On the business side, the first thing we have to do is make the tax code simpler. Right now, if you're a small business, you don't have to be a small business, you're organized as a pass-through, S corporation, LLC, you're paying on your personal rate, which could be substantially higher than what a major corporation is paying as a C corporation. That's why what I believe we should do is have a flat rate of 25% on all business income, irrespective of how you're organized. That's the only rate you have, and it's applied to your profits minus your investment. The second thing we have to do is allow businesses...
What the...
I'll let them finish.
Ahead.
We're going to enforce our immigration laws, guys. We're going to be a country that enforces our immigration laws. Thank you.
Marco, you're on a roll. Keep going.
All right. So the second thing is you have to allow businesses to fully and immediately expense everything they invest in their business. A big business can afford to, write that off over a number of years. A small or a starting business, the ability to fully write off that expense in that given tax year is critical for their survival and be able to move forward. That will make America a more attractive place for people to invest. Does the clock stop while they scream?
Yeah, we'll let you go.
Yeah.
Give us the extra.
Yeah.
So, and then on the personal side, one of the things I've called for is an increase in the per-child tax credit. Number one, it's pro-work. It encourages people to go back to work because you don't collect it if you're not working. And the other is it allows hardworking families to keep more of what they earn. Because right now, raising a family in the 21st century is incredibly expensive. And I think the most important job any of us will ever have is the job of a parent. And so I want our tax code to reflect that. And that's why I've also called for an increase in the per-child tax credit.
Tim, I think, first of all, if there are any more protesters out here, I think we got the point. And if
Do it when Kasich speaks.
And if you keep disrupting, you're just going to turn everybody against you. So we heard it, okay? Thank you all very much.
Absolutely.
Now, I think there's a couple other things. Tim, job creation is based on certainty, and Paul knows this, certainty. If you have a rickety financial system, businesses say, what's going to happen to me? If you have taxes going up, businesses are saying, oh, well, wait a minute, what's that going to mean for me? And here's another element, regulation, because regulation is what really kills a small business. Yep. I mean, we're in danger because of Dodd-Frank, of losing community banks. And, we all love the show Cheers because everybody knew our name. Well, that's what you want in a local bank. You want a bank where everybody knows your name and they can take risks. And so when we overregulate, we snuff out entrepreneurship. And these small businesses are like a gentle orchid. If you stomp on them, you kill the opportunity at a job. And our small business people are heroes because they're the ones providing jobs for our families. That's why we need to, I believe, freeze all federal regulations, and then we need to, for a year, and then we need to review them all and get rid of the dumb ones. We do that in Ohio right now.
We have a lot of dumb ones coming through.
Yeah. Secondly, but Paul, Congress should be voting on this stuff. I don't understand how the bureaucracy continues to put on regs. You guys got to knock it down.
Well, if you want to get into that, so we found a way, teaming up with the House and the Senate, because they have this goofy rule called the filibuster over there. Yeah. No offense, guys, but we found a way through the Congressional Review Act, something you and I worked on in the early days, to get around that filibuster. So we're going to have an EPA vote on the waters of the USA. We've got other votes coming up. We're going to put them on the president's desk. He'll probably veto them, but we will show where we stand and where he stands on strangulating this economy with these regulations.
So regulation is critical. But, we don't tax any small businesses on income taxes in Ohio. And we have to nurture our small businesses. So Marco's right on lowering that corporate rate and that personal rate. Reagan was down at 28. I like the 28. I think that makes sense. That helps the small businesses. And then the other element is you got to get fiscal control. Because if you don't have a rock-solid fiscal policy, businesses are like, I'm not investing. So, Tim, you need all three, regulatory, tax, and fiscal policy that makes sense. And that's what's going to allow investors to be able to say, okay, I'll create another job or I'll start a business. And that's kind of the three things that I think are critical.
Great. So, John, let's get it to the personal human level once more from this very important macro level. People facing poverty, there are lots of, it's not a one-size-fits-all problem set. And mental illness, drug addiction, these are two of some of the major problems that people from all backgrounds, from all walks of life are experiencing, which become an enormous barrier to upward mobility. This is something you worked on a lot as governor. Tell us what you did and what should we do on these specific issues of mental illness and drug addiction.
Oh, boy, that's...
And do it fairly quickly.
I will. I mean, they're just such... But this is a form you like because you don't have to do it in 30 seconds. Look, on mental illness, we promised the mentally ill they would have support at the local level, and we didn't do it. It is absolutely immoral that we're locking up the bipolar and the schizophrenics. Right. So what we're doing is we now have the resources both at the community level and our state is working on this issue and giving people treatment. and also helping them to not go into prison to begin with. Secondly, on the drug addicted, I've been working on it for 6 years. We've got programs from busting drug dealers to making sure that we're able to monitor the amount of prescriptions that are being delivered from prescribers. We can trace it to our pharmacy board. We've got rehab programs, and as I mentioned earlier, I mean, treating people in the prisons and getting them out and turning them over to the community. There we have a situation where we have less than a 20% recidivism rate, which is miraculous. And then for the working poor, Marco, it makes a lot more sense to give them some sort of health care where they don't end up getting their health care in the emergency room, where we're all paying for it at a higher price because when they go, they're sicker and more expensive. So we give them an opportunity to have health care. So, you know, the working poor and the drug addicted and the mentally ill are issues. These are people who live in the shadows. And I absolutely think, as Jack Kemp did, that when we rise, everybody's got to have a shot. And you know what? That opens everybody's hearts. And it communicates a message that we're not just about numbers and economics, but we're really about people, Paul. And I know that's where your heart is. And Marco's too.
Part of the foundation, honestly, of success in our country.
Break, man.
Yes, part of the foundation of success in the country, without any question, is making sure that kids have access to a quality education.
Absolutely.
And I know that we have had many conversations in the Senate about how we get there, and there's no doubt that the larger the role of the federal government, the fewer opportunities for kids throughout America. How do we reverse that?
Well, first of all, I strongly believe that K-12 system belongs squarely and solely in the hands of state and local communities, that we don't need a national school board.
That's right.
The second, I would say, is one of the great injustices in America today is that the only people who cannot choose where their children go to school are poor people. Rich people pay for their kids to go to a better school. The upper middle class move into better neighborhoods with better schools. And poor people are often condemned to sending their kids to schools that are failing. And so I believe at the state level, and many states across this country have aggressively pursued empowering parents to put their children in the best setting possible. And you've done work on this, Tim. One of the things that I want to see us do is create the equivalent of what we have in Florida. It's called the Corporate Scholarship Program, where in lieu of paying a portion of your corporate debt, tax liability to the federal government, you can donate it to a not-for-profit, state-based scholarship organization who in turn can give scholarship to students and families so their parents can put them in a school a better choice than the one that they're condemned to being in now by the current system.
Well, second, I think there's another part of the debate that's important as well. You think about the fact that we have a lot of folks today who are going through the K-12 education system that want to go to college. We also have others who need that dual track. They want skills to go immediately into the workforce and start working immediately. In South Carolina, we've had a lot of success with apprenticeship programs where we see folks graduate from high school and they're earning and learning at the same time.
Absolutely.
Because that dual track is important. South Carolina, as an example, is a state where high-tech manufacturing is alive and it is well. Volvo just came to South Carolina. BMW expanded. Boeing on the coast. Mercedes-Benz. So there is a real economy for those middle-skilled workers that we have to make sure that they flourish as well.
I don't know why we became a country that started telling people, oh, trade school are for the kids that aren't smart enough to go to college. That's a lie. Trade school are for people that want to make $50,000 a year. And there are many local school districts in Ohio and South Carolina and Florida and others that are doing a great job of providing that. And then there are some that don't have that. So I think if you are a student and you're 15 or 16 years old and you've decided, I want to be a welder, I want to be a car technician, an airplane mechanic, and there isn't a program available for you to do it, I want us to open up Pell Grant so that you can use it even before you graduate high school. You can use it to go to high school in the morning and then the local community college in the afternoon and acquire a skill. And when you graduate, you're not just getting a high school diploma. You are certified to work as a welder, a plumber, a pipe fitter.
We've lowered vocational education to the 7th grade. It's already done in our state. Secondly, I have to tell you, we also have to pay attention to early childhood education. We can't have people who are extremely poor where they can't have the kind of development in their brains that they need, because as we all know, if they don't get it as they get older, they lose the capacity to do as well as they can do. So early childhood education, vocational education. But here's another thing. We need to raise the standards of our guidance counselors so they actually guide students, and they're not involved in just monitoring the gym or the cafeteria. And finally, and Marco, I think it should be done across the country. We know the in-demand jobs in our state. And what we need is we need to make sure that we are training and educating people K through 12 for the jobs that exist. Right. And in the old days, you could get a high school education, and if you didn't do very well, you could get a job in a steel mill or a chemical plant or something and make $70 or $60 or $50,000 and support your family. Those jobs don't exist. So the K through 12 system is going to have to produce students who have the skills for the 21st century jobs. Now that's not something that a federal government ought to do, but it's something that every school district needs to do. And in addition to all of that, we've now unleashed a mentoring program. If you are a business and you involve a faith-based or a value-based organization and you agree to take over a school from the standpoint of mentoring a child, we will give you a 3-for-1 match. Now, why does that matter? In the Cincinnati Public Schools, they have a 63% graduation rate. And in a school district where the businesses have gone in and mentoring, they have a 97% graduation rate. Mentoring and encouraging children of all income levels is absolutely critical.
Three principles that we as conservatives think about, talk about, and act on that are sorely needed here. Number one, federalism. The Constitution. Devolve power back to the states and localities so that government closest to the people can govern best. And that's something that we're talking about here clearly with what you're talking about in Ohio and with your flex grant. Second one is customize. Individual persons have individual different problems, so customize aid and support to meet their particular need. A liberal, progressive, collectivist philosophy can't accept that. It doesn't comport. It's contrary to that view. But the third one that we talk about quite a bit, and we practice this in our economic philosophy, but in our social philosophy, is how do we measure outcomes? How do we rewire the entire system from an input-based, effort measurement system? How much money are we spending? How many programs are we creating? Inputs to focus on results. And one of the things that I think we've learned is as I travel the country, and many people have done this, is you also have to break up these local government monopolies. A lot of states, you go to collect some welfare benefit at the county welfare agency, and that's the only game in town. But if you go to, say, Catholic Charities or Lutheran Social Services, or you go to the City of Hope, House of Help in Anacostia, in Washington, D.C., or if you look at America Works in Milwaukee, a for-profit institution, they're in the business of actually providing this holistic support that's customizing it, and they're competing based on results with that local county welfare agency. They're competing. So the breaking up the provision of services so that it's competitive, and so that if you succeed in providing these services by having better outcomes and better results, getting people out of poverty, tracking them, then you'll do even more. And if you don't, if you're not good, if the county welfare agency just is rubber stamping people through the system, then they go out of business. How do we apply that principle to this space?
Well, what we've done is we've taken our welfare operation and put it in with our job training into one. We're moving them all into one facility so that when you are dependent, and look, some people, as you know, Tim, they need to get up to a benchmark. I mean, there are people that really do not know how to set an alarm, show up for work. We got to get them to a benchmark to where they can then perform. And then what we want to do is to make sure we combine both the assistance with the requirement, the tough requirement that you have to come and get trained. If you're able-bodied, we're not going to put up with this if you just want to walk away. So this is an amazing and a very comprehensive reform in the state. It's funny, we're making good progress on it, but some of the welfare departments don't want to do it. And I'm telling them, look, if you don't want to do it, I'll just turn around and privatize it. I mean, or I'll turn it over to another county, which really gets their attention. But the idea that we get people who need skills, help skills out, help skills grow. That's, to me, the best way you can do it. Paul, and your idea of any idea is acceptable in the 21st century.
At the core of your question are 2 points. The first principle is this idea we reached in this country where the more money you spend on, that's evidence that you care about it because you spend more money on it and more money on it. The purpose here is not to spend more money, although it may take more money. The purpose is, what is it doing? Is it actually solving the underlying problem, which goes back to the point that I made about our safety net program. Our safety net in America today does not cure poverty. It treats the pain of poverty, the symptoms of poverty, but it does not cure it. The only cure for poverty is a good paying job. And we need to have programs that allow people to acquire the skills and the opportunity they need for that better paying job. And the second point is, the answer doesn't always lie in a government agency. And I think that's what John was talking about, opening up these funds and these programs for competition, for innovative programs that can provide solutions to the particular problem. Look, this is a huge impediment in higher education. Today, you can only get a 4-year degree from an accredited college, accredited by only one of 6 accrediting boards in America. Meanwhile, we have dozens of high-quality learning programs that you can learn in a self-directed way. You can get credit for what you've learned through work experience, military experience, life experience, self-directed online coursework. You should be allowed to package all of that learning into basically the equivalent of a degree or a certificate program. And what's standing in the way of it is an outdated and outmoded accrediting model.
Yeah, so this is our challenge. This is what I see as the fight that is coming. Because we're going to engage with our principles and offer better ideas for the way forward in cracking the code, actually tackling the root cause of poverty, winning the war on poverty, we're going to have to confront all of these monopolies, all of these status quo monopolies. That, as Bob says, it's the poverty industrial complex, it's the accreditation. So what do you think, Marco, is the key to taking on these monopolies, decentralizing power, and injecting competition for results so that we actually can crack this code?
Well, I think it begins by convincing people that you actually care about what they're going through. Because what the other side is going to say is the Republicans, the conservatives, they're just looking to gut the anti-poverty programs. They don't want to fund our particular government agency the way it's been funded traditionally. That means they don't care about people like you. And that's why the work you've done, and you've done, Tim, and you've done, John, and this we're doing here today is so critical. If you don't talk about what people are going through, they don't think you care about people like them. So it begins with acknowledging that we do have a problem in America, that there are people that are being left behind, and that we want to fix that problem because we can't be the great country we are destined to continue to be if we don't solve that problem of a significant percentage of the American family is being left behind. But the reason why we are changing it is because what we're doing now doesn't work.
That's right.
It isn't working. What we are doing now is what's leaving people behind. What we're doing now is what's trapping people. What we're doing now is what's condemning a 7-year-old child to not be able to break the cycle of poverty they inherited from their parents and from their grandparents, because they are condemned to failing schools, because all the underlying issues in their lives are not being addressed, but oftentimes by government monopolies that only care about existing for the purpose of themselves, for existing and perpetuating the current status quo. So it won't be easy. Anytime you take on an established status quo government program or anything for that matter, it is a hard fight, but it is a fight we must have, because America is special, because it is a nation where everyone can go as far as their talent and their work will take them. If we lose that, we stop being a special country.
You know, I got to tell you, Paul, that this is very interesting. I think, Marco, you're right. You have to establish the credibility. So all the efforts that we've made, not just to grow the economy, but to make sure that people don't get left behind. So I was unveiling my tax cut plan in my last budget. You know where I did it? At an annual meeting of the community action agencies. Now, community action agencies are not normally a place where typically Republicans go to announce tax cuts. But what I told them is, I've helped you, but you got to understand, we got to create jobs. So I got a tax cut plan that I believe will improve the economy and will create jobs, and I expect you to support it. And they did. And they did. So I think that when you have results and you show people that you care, people are willing to change. They're willing to make changes. Now, the bureaucracy is another deal, and sometimes you just got to take them on, and you got to disenfranchise them. Give them a chance. Give them a chance. But if they don't want to change, then you don't have any choice.
This is really where the war heads, in my opinion. There has to be a philosophical discussion about where we are as a country and how we get to the next level of opportunities in this nation. Too many people today believe that the federal government or the government is the first place you go when you're in need and not the last place to go. And we have these major debates about what should the minimum wage be. And frankly, when we have those types of debates on the minimum wage, the poorest workers lose when we increase that minimum wage. And when you're looking for that good job, without the access to the skill set that you typically get at your entry-level jobs, you're stuck. You're taking rungs out of the bottom of the ladder, so it makes it even more difficult to climb up that ladder.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I think the first thing we have to explain and be very clear about is that what we want is a country where everyone has a chance, without any sort of outside interference, has a chance to go as far as their talent and their work will take them. The impediments that people face to that are different, and we've got to address those different issues. One of them is skills. You talked about the minimum wage for a moment. In this era of automation, the minimum wage is a threat to jobs, because if you make a person more expensive than a machine, you're only going to accelerate automation. In the fast food industry, most of the national fast food chains will be fully automated at some point. You're only going to make that happen faster. Now, the jobs of building those machines that are replacing them pay a lot more, but you have to have certain skills. And if you don't have a higher education system and a community college system and a technical career system that is training people for those new skills, they are going to be left behind. And that's what we're facing today, is a dramatic transformation in the very nature of our economy. We're not just living through an economic downturn. We are living through an economic transformation on par with the Industrial Revolution, except it's happening every 5 years instead of over 100 years. And it threatens to leave people behind if we don't equip people with the skills they need to succeed in the new economy. And we are a country that has a retirement system designed in the 30s, higher education designed in the 50s, poverty programs designed in the 60s, energy policies from the 70s, and nothing looks like it did 5 years ago. We have an outdated government and a big government left, that is more interested in protecting the status quo than in modernizing our policies to address the challenges of the 21st century. That's a huge issue in this campaign.
One of the things that I found just so profound is just going out, using, like my mom says, I've got 2 ears, 1 mouth, using them in that proportion. Going out and just watching people struggle, listening to what they've done, and seeing, that's what some of these videos you'll see, seeing these incredible stories of people overcoming amazing adversity. And that's the best lesson there is, seeing what other people have done. And then our job as policymakers is to get behind them so that we can empower more of this. Name, who is a person that you know that fell on hard times, that was in destitution, that went through a struggle and that really succeeded, that really flourished, that found their potential? Who is the person you know that did that, and why do you think they were able to make it?
You know, I just had 2 in New Hampshire, Marco. One, I went to this forum on drug addiction. In 1998 or 1999, I don't remember, I wrote a book called Courage is Contagious, and it was a story of ordinary people who do extraordinary things. And one of the people in the book was a young lady who went to a university, and I met her at the university. She and her mother lived in a car, and her mother was an addict. And I met her at Princeton. I don't even know how you apply to Princeton when you're living in a car because you're homeless. And I hadn't seen her. She'd traveled with me on a book tour. I hadn't seen her in 20 years. I saw her in New Hampshire. She's now running one of the national anti-drug programs in America. And then the other day, a woman who had been human trafficked, she busted out of it. She's now running human trafficking on the national level, or else in New Hampshire. What happened? Lord's got a lot of miracles, and we're not running out of them. There's one out there for somebody else. So it's determination, it's grit, it's not allowing yourself to be defined as a victim, right? I mean, when we were kids, our parents taught us, when you get knocked down, you get back up again. I mean, all 4 of us sitting up here operate under that philosophy. But there's also this, I happen to believe that the power of faith really makes a difference. That you were created for a purpose. That the Lord expects you to carry out a mission to help heal the world. And when I looked at these 2 women, I mean, they're miracles, and I pointed to everybody in the room. You look at this. If you don't believe in miracles, if you don't believe in the power of the Lord, look at these people's lives. And they're very inspiring, Paul, but the stories go on and on and on, and it's always great to put them together and tell people that they can be what they're meant to be, and it raises all of our games and gives us hope and determination and grit and love.
Margo.
Yeah, and in the course of my life and the campaign, I've interacted with so many people in my family, in my neighborhood, parents we interact with on my son's sports teams that are facing extraordinary challenges, and people that have worked for me. The one story I always tell is the one that's deeply influenced me because it happens to be very close, and it goes to the story of my parents. This was a long time ago, but I think it still speaks to the promise of America. When my parents were born both in Cuba. My father, when he was 9 years old, 4 days shy of his 9th birthday, his mother died. And so he had to stop going to school, and he had to go work at 9 years of age. And the bottom line is he really never went back to school, and he would work for the next 70 years of his life. In 1956, my parents came here. It was the only place in the world where people like them could have a chance. They arrived, they had no money, they barely spoke the language, didn't know anyone, had no real education beyond whatever an 8-year-old learned in Havana in the 1930s and 40s. And it was hard. This was not an instant success for them. They struggled to find a job that they could do. My father in particular struggled. They would take any job they could find, but they just persevered. And let me tell you what happened less than 10 years later. Working hard, my father found a job, eventually worked his way up to being a banquet bartender on Miami Beach. My mother was a cashier at a hotel, a stock clerk at Kmart, a maid at a hotel in Las Vegas. And my parents were never rich. They were never famous. You never would have heard about them had I not run for office and told their story. But my parents were successful because working as a bartender and a maid, just a few decades removed from that very difficult circumstance, they owned a home in a safe and stable neighborhood. They both retired with dignity and security, and they left all 4 of their children better off than themselves. And the thing I love about this country is, number one, this is the only place in the world where they ever could have done that. And number two, it is the story of millions of people, including people sitting here today and people up on the stage right now. We are all a generation or two removed from that story. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes us different, and that's what makes us special. And that's what's we're at risk of losing. And if we ever lose that, we stop being an exceptional country. We've all experienced that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have about 22 seconds left.
Well, it looks like we wore out the protesters.
I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Well, they have 16 seconds left. Don't know.
Let's not encourage them, just in case. You guys have been a fantastic audience. Let's hear it for John Kasich and Marco Rubio.
Thank you.
Great. We're going to do a photo.
Good job.
Good job.
Good. Do a quick picture.
Yeah.
Let me do a quick picture.
You come on in the middle, guys.
Over here. Yeah. Got it?
All right. That's enough.
Thanks,
Cool.
guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
it. See you.
Good.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, we have a really special treat from 1 to 2 p.m. We have Morning Joe. Does anybody here watch Morning Joe? We have Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski here. They're going to be talking to Speaker Ryan and Senator Scott and some other leaders on issues facing poverty, like Arthur Brooks, Bob Woodson, and they'll be up here at 1 o'clock. We have a 20-minute break. Would everybody just pause one moment? This is going to be my last chance to do this. And I want to recognize my mom, Joanne Kemp, who's right down here. The Jack Kemp Foundation, one of the things that my dad said when he was passing away, my dad had melanoma, and he had dealt with it for 5 months that he knew about it. He had a long time before that. But Dad told all of us that his legacy, what he cared about, was not having politicians talk about him, was not having people think about tax cuts. I'm sure he'd like that. But what he cared about was that his legacy would be his family. It's a privilege and an honor on behalf of the Kemp family to stand before you all and welcome you to our family. My mom, we all love our moms. We love you, Mom. And I'm so grateful that you all could be here and see what the civil competition of ideas looks like. We need citizens who are willing to engage in discussions without shouting, without being rude, but we want people to engage. So like I said, again, go to kempforum.com, sign up to be an opportunity voter, and whatever you're thinking, we want to help talk to you, engage you, and help you engage with folks who are making a lot of important decisions on the issues that we care about. So thank you all so much. Thanks for joining our family. And Joe and Mika will be up and about at 12:47, 12:50, something like that. Thank you. Another break.